So I've been lucky enough to kind of watch the embryonic growth and launch of our server platform, and see the impact and footprint that we've made already within the 4 years that we've been trading now for servers. So already in the market, within 4 years, we are now first and number one in the US, and number two for Blade in the UK. So we've made a massive impact within the 4 years in terms of that landscape of the server. And what I will do today is talk around kind of the differentiation of our product, the benefits and the innovation of our product, the automation that we brought in with the software layer, and go through some of the unique selling points around the Cisco platform and kind of what we're doing around the evolving marketplace and product portfolio. So in the IT industry, when I first started, somebody handed me a book of terminology and acronyms and kind of said, right, you need to learn this first before you kind of you speak to anyone. And in the IT industry, there are so many buzzwords, there's so many terminology, and with data center, there seems to be more. So you've now got big data, you've got cloud, you've got virtualization, you've got public, you've got private cloud, you've got then different VMs, and what does that actually mean? And actually, what does that mean to your infrastructure, and how does that benefit you in terms of how you go to business on a day-to-day life, but also how your infrastructure scales, and how do you then factor that into your OPEX and your CAPEX costs every single year? The data center is becoming more critical, but actually it's application and user-led rather than infrastructure-led now. And that effect and that swing in terms of the marketplace has had a massive effect in terms of then deciding the infrastructure and how you scale and how you build resiliency into that data center infrastructure so that you can scale for your growth and for the demand of your users. So Cisco UCS. You've probably heard the word before, but actually the unified computing system does not stand for a server. So the S in the UCS does not stand for a server. It classes as a system. And this is because we're building a system for growth, not just a point product anymore. So the silo approach in terms of just buying another server or buying another component to add to your infrastructure to scale for your growth is something of the past. And now you need to look at kind of how the system will react and what the scalability is within that system to help you on your growth plans for your business. So already within the 4 years, I've already mentioned that we're number one in the US and number two in the UK for Blade. We've got 33,000 unique UCS customers trading now. And we're top 5 server vendor. We've got 94 world record performance benchmarks to date, and we've got loads of validated designs across the whole ecosystem of vendors, which I'll go on to. It shows that then you've got a validated solution that you can scale, you can understand the capabilities within that solution, and you know that they will work in a harmonious ecosystem. So, building data centers, not business outcomes. Partners and customers that I deal with on a daily basis still have siloed effects in terms of the business groups or the business units that they work in. So I will speak to a security team if I want to understand how secure the network is or how secure the data center is. And I'd go to the network and storage teams individually, and the server and virtualization teams. I would then speak to somebody in the applications world to have another conversation in terms of what their roadmap is, in terms of the applications that they're then going to use for their business and how then that impacts the rollout. This is good. It shows that there's granular control, but what it doesn't do is help the infrastructure scale and understand kind of where you want to go in terms of that growth plan if all business units aren't talking together. So what we've done as an infrastructure is bring the whole automation piece together. So actually the data center will work and speak to all components on a unified fabric state so that it can talk and scale to all of these elements of your business drivers and your key challenges today. So we basically create stairs that speak and open up all of those doors to make sure that all considerations are speaking to each other, and you have full visibility and management control of all of those components and business challenges that you need to factor in for your scalability and resiliency today. I've talked about the terminologies and kind of the key buzzwords within the data center today. And the drivers around new apps, cloud, big data, what does that mean for your business? IT automation and Internet of Things, having everything on any device, anywhere, at any time. I'm guilty of it now as a user. I want all my mail on any device that I touch. I want to be able to control the mail that I get. I want to control the out of office. I want to have my own profile on any device that I have from Cisco, and I'm one user. And you have to have an infrastructure that can cater for that, but also save your profile and back it up on a database. And you need to be secure in doing that. All of these drivers mean different things to different people, but what the infrastructure must cater for is every element of these fundamental drivers within the data center. It must cater for what's applicable to your business. So whether you want to have part of your business in the cloud, virtually on site, or whether you want to outsource part of it securely but still have access to the data, or if you want to make sure that all of your technical people can automate the IT profiles, can set up policies, can set up new users virtually. So they could be off site and you need a new user to set up on a VDI profile. You can do that with the data center infrastructure from Cisco. And I'll go into that in more detail. So the evolution of IT just means that basically it's consumer-led, it's application-led now. And you want to have an infrastructure that's innovative and provides fast IT so that you can access it at any time, anywhere, and have the resiliency and security that the data center is well protected, and you have the scalability to grow. So time to innovate. Imagine that you've got a world where you need to make sure that you've got the latest technology to innovate, but also you can manage it and understand how you can manage it. And you can have full visibility of the full ecosystem on one management software within the infrastructure. You can reduce the time and reduce the risk of human error by adding this management software layer. And ultimately, what you want to be able to do with the data center infrastructure is drive down the total cost of ownership. Having a look at, over your 5-year plan, where your business wants to go to, and instead of that, just in case, so you'll buy an extra server, or you'll make sure that you've got extra RAM and memory and extra security, just to make sure that when you grow, you'll fit into it. So this will, the Cisco platform will make sure that you can have just as you want, but then virtually you can cater for that growth. So you don't have to buy physical kit. And again, that's the operational cost that you can factor in on a year-by-year basis. Over the last 20 years is basically how it looks here. So you would have the server, the networking, and attached to the storage. You would then have connections out of each server, at least 10 different connections. So it would connect to a switch, it would connect to a router, it connects to your LAN, any different iSCSIs. And for resiliency, you would probably overall, let's say, have about 10 different connections out of that one server, and the management would then be led on that one server. If you wanted to do anything for that one server, you would then need to go into that individual MAC address, find that port that you wanted to change, or set the profile on that individual component within that infrastructure. Again, if something goes down, then you have to fact find in terms of, again, finding that MAC address and profile. With the Cisco servers and with the Cisco UCS, what we have done is introduce the embedded management. And this is done by the unified fabric layer. So instead of having all of the management led by the single components within your infrastructure, we've basically created the unified fabric, which is led on those 2 switches at the top. So all of these servers then, below it, will be dumb boxes. And you will control them by the unified fabric layer, which means then that the cables going out are reduced from minimum 10 cables per server going out. You will have just 2 connections from each. server going into that fabric layer. And the fabric layer then is the management platform called the UCS manager that will control all of that infrastructure, have full visibility, and you can create server profiles that can then be dropped down onto any single server. So if you had a service profile on a rack server and you wanted to then just quickly change it to a blade, then you can just drag and drop through the UCS management platform, which comes free of charge with this unified fabric, and you can drop it down. The only thing that the UCS platform will recognize is that actually it's just got a bit more memory and a bit more RAM. It will act in exactly the same way. So you can drag and drop these service profiles instead of humanly having to go in and manually create that MAC address, the brand new profile, the brand new policy per server. So again, it's led through the fabric layer. This again means that you get maximum capability out of all of your server components. So the memory isn't being eaten into because you don't hold the policies and the service profiles within the server. You hold it on the fabric layer, and all of the controls are led on the fabric layer. So you get maximum capability and capacity out of all of the servers that you get in that infrastructure. This also means that you can remove unnecessary switches and adapters and management modules and the licenses that go on those management modules and the renewal licenses that then go on those management modules within the infrastructure. So then when you revert back to having a look at total cost of ownership, on a year-by-year basis, you're saving quite a lot of money, not only on the hardware that you would purchase, but also then on the management modules and software that you would have to renew on those products. And this is our unique selling point in terms of reducing the complexity of the data center by having full visibility of the servers and the switches within your infrastructure. You can manage the service profiles, and your technical people can set up policies, virtual machines, and they can then set these policies. They can set them and they will save them in that UCS manager. Then you can administrate any drag and drop or any control over that full infrastructure. Again, if something goes wrong, you can shut down the policy rather than the machine. So you can shut down the policy and it will be controlled by the fabric interconnects and the fabric layer, which again reduces the complexity within the data center. Lower costs, so fewer servers, as I said, switches and adapters, and it efficiently scales. So if you did want to grow, you literally add the server and the blades onto there, or you extend into the virtual machine capability within that 10 gigabit flexibility within the fabric layer. So you've probably seen this before, but this is a good illustration of the data center and kind of where that complexity around the amount of cabling that's required versus the Cisco UCS. So on the back, you've got a really traditional kind of ad hoc. You want to grow, you add more infrastructure. The cabling is everywhere, and it's kind of not organized as well. In the middle, you've got a data center, but you've got the traditional 10 or more cables going out of each component for resiliency, for LAN connection, for switching, for if you want to old-fashionedly put it into the iSCSI or to cloud, if you want to put it into storage. And then you've got the Cisco UCS. So you can see here you've got the two cables that then feed back into the top of the fabric layer. This will then allow all of the fabric layer to control all of those servers beneath it, but you've got a tidier data center. Not only does it look tidier, but it affects the airflow. So in our design, we've actually got a front-to-back airflow, which means that you can run the data center slightly higher in terms of temperature because there's no blockage in terms of that airflow going through those components. Again, reverting back to total cost of ownership and return on investment for your infrastructure. On your power and cooling, data centers cost a lot of money. And when you look at that over a 5-year period and build that into your factors in terms of that calculation, it does actually save you a lot of money. So the policy-driven data center is something that we've really created and driven for, and it's around automation with data center UCS. It's defining the application and putting your efforts into making sure that the policy frameworks are set, and then the fabric layer will lead that on the UCS manager. The best way to describe these service profiles and policies is exactly the same as a SIM card in a phone. I'd be lost without my iPhone. Just moved to a new iPhone 6 and literally plugged in my SIM card. And down, obviously, because of the cloud application that saved all my profiles and application, I literally plugged in my SIM card and downloaded my applications. And again, within 20 minutes, I was using all of my applications as they were before. I had all of my data stored. My mail was pre-populated, and I had no problem in terms of then being a user again of my product. The service profiles are exactly the same. As I say, if you want to move them, recreate them, mirror them, put them on a different blade, set up a virtual machine if you've got X amount of users that are brand new into your business, or an application that you want to run, you can absolutely set these service profiles up, and within a couple of minutes they will be up and running on your infrastructure. And again, because no human intervention has to go out and touch cables, search MAC addresses, set up profiles, can key in anything wrong. Because those policies are set, you've got less risk of human error within that data center. And the critical time in terms of making sure that everything is up and running means that it's maintained. So Cisco Management. I've talked around the UCS manager, which controls the service profiles within the server and the fabric layer. We also have UCS Central, which will control multiple UCS domains as well. On top of that, we have the UCS Director, which will then talk to a converged solution. So it will talk to anything in terms of the hypervisor, the storage, the management platform. It includes the UCS Manager, and it's all under one pane of glass. So you have one single platform and interface that you will then manage your whole converged solution on, rather than having different management platforms that you individually need to go in and create. And then we've got the prime service catalogs for the cloud offering in terms of making sure that you understand the cost per user and what your users are doing, what they're utilizing within your servers. So we're constantly creating innovations and widening our portfolio to make sure that we meet the business requirements and also the industry requirements in terms of that application-led infrastructure. So just recently we've launched the UCS Mini. So where I talked about the fabric infrastructure owning the data center, UCS Mini, the fabric interconnects are built into the servers. So this means that you have an office in a box that will cater for a large amount of virtual machines and users, and these build up. So it's based on kind of 50 virtual machines, 100 virtual machines, so that you've got a scalable solution there that can meet the business requirements. These have been highly popular for DR sites, for certain applications that you want to run singularly on a UCS Mini rather than creating and putting it into your own current infrastructure. And good for public sector and local government schools as well. We then have the core infrastructure in terms of the Cisco data center, so the UCSB, so it's the blade, and the rack server, which is UCSC. And we've got the cloud scale computing, which is around the M series too. I've talked around kind of the ecosystem of architectures and applications, but this slide just demonstrates the wide and vast ecosystem that we've got in terms of those relationships and validated designs with all of our ecosystem partners. This means that then you have the security that these vendors have backed up a validated design that's been deployed. You have the understanding in terms of its scalability and capacity, and then you can benchmark that against your total cost of ownership and return on investment over a 5-year period. And again, it creates that resiliency in terms of knowing how much your infrastructure is going to cost depending on and where you want to grow. So some calculations that we've done in terms of benchmarking, some successful wins and some case studies. And these are the results in terms of why those customers chose Cisco UCS. That it reduced the infrastructure costs overall. The disaster recovery, because of the management and automation platform, reduced by, and it was faster by 50%. But it also reduces the security risk that you've got in terms of human intervention, in terms of then going into each single component. Deployment times, 90% less time, because you've got this software that will automatically scan and pick up all of the server components within that. It sets up the profiles, it sets up the policies. You then don't need to go into individual deploy. IT staffing, in terms of deploying, you can put that to more valuable resource instead of spending days setting up profiles, setting up service profiles and policies and installing the kit. Power and cooling, I've talked about the fans and the less cabling, which results in then the power and cooling costs year by year that would decrease. And the application performance. So in summary, it's a simplified architecture. You've seen kind of the complexity around the management of all the single components. The UCS manager and the fabric layer brings simplified architecture to the Cisco UCS platform. Unified management in terms of that UCS director, so a single pane of glass that will cover the whole converged solution. That means then you can cover your storage, your virtualization, and your server within one interface. Higher performance in terms of making sure that you get the maximum capability and capacity out of your servers, and scale, making sure that you can then virtually scale and meet your business requirements and growth. So I revert back to the business challenges. And each of these then technology transitions the UCS can cater for, or you can be ready for. So you don't need to feel as though you have to move everything out to the cloud or virtualization or have everything automated on IT. What the UCS platform does ensure is that you'll be ready for that market transition without having to invest in further infrastructure or further software to make that happen and to make your infrastructure IT ready in terms of that industry trend. So with that, I'd like to open now and say if there are any questions. Okay, thank you. If you do have any questions or anything, then we do have a stand downstairs. We're more than happy to talk you through the infrastructure and anything that you've specifically got around UCS. Thank you.